Well, welcome to class today. I've been thinking about this, trying to prepare, and actually trying to prepare properly, because what I'm going to talk about today is the kind of subject that, in order for me to really do what I want to do, I really need to have the Spirit with me, because I'm going to talk about some things that have what I believe are spiritual foundations. Many of you are going to be making career decisions in your life. In fact, you read today that maybe the average person in today's society will change their career. I'm not sure when in the reading, a career direction maybe as many as 7 times during their lifetime. And even now, many of you, here going to school, the process of trying to make a decision relative to a major, what kind of job I'm looking for in the future. I don't believe that you can make those kinds of decisions well unless they're based upon some spiritual principles. And so I want to begin today my discussion on that basis. Maybe the best way to start is to note that in accounting, where you're accounting for the financial position, a balance sheet, a financial position of a company, so that you properly reflect their assets, liabilities, and owner's equity, one of the things you've got to do is you've got to identify ownership of that. What does this company really own? Make sure that the balance sheet includes all of those assets and doesn't include assets maybe somebody else owns and just, was improperly stated on our statements. And so establishing ownership is important. And I've thought about that concept in my own personal life. What is it that I really own? I've got title to my home, and I've got a pink slip on my car, and so yeah, I own some things. But from a spiritual standpoint, you might question some of those. I remember a number of years ago, I just joined the church. I was a brand new member of the church, joined the church when I was a senior in high school. And shortly after I joined the church, President Spencer W. Kimball became the prophet and president of the church. And I remember a talk, and frankly, it's a little startling to me that I remember anything, because as the years have gone by, my ability to recall things is seriously diminished. And it's a simple thing. He told a story about a man. I got the impression, I'm paraphrasing here clearly, that this guy was a very well-off, large estate. And President Kimball told about a visit he made to that estate and how this gentleman had kind of given him a tour. And apparently there was this fantastic, fabulous tree on the property this man was very proud of. In my own mind's eye, I've kind of thought of some spectacular California oak or something like that. I kind of like trees. And President Kimball said that a number of years later, he was driving by that property again and reflected on that tree. And in the interim, the owner had passed away. And President Kimball's thoughts were very simple. It's just, that tree's still there. And I guess he really didn't own that tree. And it's somebody else's now. And to some extent, that's really the way it is with all of our temporal possessions. They're really very temporary. It's in my opinion, we ought to look at things, almost everything that we do, from an eternal perspective. In fact, Elder Dallin Oaks defines spirituality as the ability to see the things that happen in your life in eternal terms. He even describes it as almost like wearing a pair of glasses and looking and seeing the things that happen in your life through a lens that gives you an eternal view. And when you start looking at things that way, all of a sudden your material possessions really aren't yours. They're just temporary. They'll be somebody else's, or they'll be in some trash pile, within a matter of years. And so, do I really own these things? Probably not. In fact, I probably am more a steward over my material possessions than I am an owner. Stewardship means that I have really temporary possession, And that the true owner is, in this case, I think Heavenly Father is the one who really owns those things. And I have temporary possession. I'm accountable to him as to how I use those things. You know, sometimes we think that we own our talents. I mean, sometimes we are inclined to define ourselves by our very talents. Hey, I'm a teacher. I'm a basketball player. That's what I am. That's what I do. I'm a musician. But at the same time, you know, those kinds of talents are also very, very temporary. I mean, I used to be a decent athlete and played some competitive basketball. You know, the other day I was out, I can hardly walk and chew gum at the same time. It's really discouraging. You better enjoy your abilities while you have them. You know, some great pianist gets in an automobile accident, and just like that, it's gone. We know that the talents that we have are gifts from our Heavenly Father, and that He determines the timing, the extent of the ability. And we have possession of it, but it's temporary, and we're accountable to Him as to how we use that gift. Even our time. Heck, it's my time. I can do with it what I want. Well, it's by the very grace of God that we take each and every breath. And so to a great extent, it sounds to me like it's really a gift and that I'm accountable to Him. It's a stewardship. All of these things aren't really things that I own. I'm a steward. I found it interesting how Elder Maxwell in your pre-class readings talked about how the only thing over which you are truly sovereign is what? The only thing that you really own, that you really are the king of, that is yours, that you're really sovereign over, is, your will, your right to choose, your mind and your heart. That's yours. And he even characterized it as being, to some extent, he says, the only true gift you can give is when, in fact, you submit your will to His. Because every other gift, you know, when we think we're so generous, pay a full tithe, and maybe even generous in our fast offerings, and we're feeling pretty good about ourselves. I served a full-time mission, almost a tithing of my time up to this point in time in my life, feeling pretty good about being generous and serving in various capacities in the church and these kinds of things. That, yeah, you can feel good about that, but just remember that everything that you're giving is something that He'd already given to you in the first place. It's not really a pure, true gift. The only true gift is when you allow yourself to become consumed with doing His will, where you say, with my time, my talents, and whatever resources I may come into possession, I'm interested in doing Thy will, not mine. Whatever you want, that's what I'll do. It's kind of a difficult thing in some cases. Elder Maxwell talks about it being a very safe choice. It's a truly safe choice because our Heavenly Father is good and He loves us. He will always do whatever's appropriate for our best interests as we sacrifice and do what He wants us to do. I believe that deeply, and I believe that ought to be the foundation of the building blocks of a career. When you start making decisions about what you're going to do in your life, it seems to me that you ought to make those decisions in that context. Thy will be done, not necessarily mine. You know, when I talk to business students and talk to them about careers, it's always kind of fun. In the past, I've asked students, why have you decided to major in business? Why have you decided to major in business? You know what? Never once have I ever had a student say to me, Norm, the reason why I've decided to major in business is because I am passionate about providing goods or services to customers. And the very thought of it just turns me on. Can't wait. That's all I want to do. Goods, services to customers. No, what is it? I mean, why, majoring in business, it's usually, hey, hey, that's where the money is. That's where I can make some money, provide for my family, all the good things of the world and life, and hey, that's what business is all about, is making money, and that's my primary interest. Is in many cases the primary objective of most students majoring in business. But if you question them further, one of the things I often hear is I hear students saying to me, my real goal in life in terms of career and stuff is to become financially independent. That's what I'd really like to do. I'd like to become financially independent. So define that for me. Well, then they'll define it. And most common definition I've heard is somebody says, well, I'd be financially independent if I had enough money or resources, usually thinking in terms of money, so that I wouldn't have to work if I didn't want to. Then I'd truly be independent. That's a lousy definition because it's worthless. I've discovered in my own life, my own personal experience, that life without meaningful work isn't worth living at all. I mean, I've actually experimented with that a little bit. Tried to do, spend a year or two doing nothing worthwhile. And you know what? It was spiritually demeaning. It was, I just could not do it and have the Spirit in my life. And it affected every facet of my life, my relationship with my wife, my children, how I felt about myself with my Heavenly Father. I mean, if you're not engaged in something where you feel like you're actually utilizing the blessings and the tools that the Lord has given you in a way that makes some kind of a meaningful contribution, I don't know. At least for me, that's not a life that a person should really aspire to. But there is a definition of financial independence that I think is really useful and powerful. That would be this: having enough money or resources so that I could choose the kind of meaningful work I really wanted to do. Now that would be a goal worthwhile, it seems to me. Having enough so that, so I could exercise flexibility and choose the kind of meaningful work that I really want to do. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that given that definition, you may have more financial independence the day you graduate from BYU than you'll ever have the rest of your life. I know that some of you are probably thinking, oh, come on, give me a break. I'm going to prove it to you. We have a friend, Southern California. He's an attorney. Visit him, if not every year, every other year, we get together for lunch, and we start talking about life, and we start talking about, his job, and, there's never been a time where I've spent any significant time with him where he hasn't ripped on his career, his job. I mean, it's clear to me that the guy is dissatisfied, hates what he does. I'm not making a general statement about the law profession here. It's just this guy doesn't like what he's doing. And I've asked him more than once, well, if you could do anything that you wanted to do, what would it be? What would you do? And he said the same thing every time I've asked him. You know what I'd really like to do? I would like to teach high school English and coach basketball. He gets this look in his eye, like, now I'm not convinced that he really means that, or at least that he's intelligently analyzed it, because I've suggested to him, I said, well, if you think you'd really like to teach high school, why don't you, teach a little early morning seminary, see if you really like the give and take, with those high school students. Yeah, I've done that for 3 years in my own life, and, that'll... Anyways, he's never done that, and but it's clear to me that he's thought about it and has this desire. So I say to him, you only live once here in this life. Well, why don't you do what you really want to do? And you're going to live your whole life, and and just dream about it? You're never going to do it? A waste. Ah, I can't afford to. What do you mean you can't afford to? Well, this is what he means. Let's assume for a moment that he's making $300,000 a year. Pull a number out of our hat. Maybe he's making a little more, a little less, but it's probably those numbers, somewhere around there. And now, AT&T, after tax and tithing, he's probably only keeping 40 cents on the dollar. So 40 cents on 300,000 means he's actually keeping cash about 120,000 a year. That's 10,000 a month. This guy lives in a very, very nice home in a very nice neighborhood. And they got 4 cars, nice cars. They're all leased. And, they go on some pretty nice vacations. And, a couple of kids are going to a private school. And, they got the best of everything. And I'm telling you, this guy is living month to month. He's barely making it. And he's enslaved to his job. I said to him, well, what do you mean you can't afford it? What he really means is I can't afford to maintain my lifestyle. Every single time this guy's ever gotten a raise, they've just kind of lifted their lifestyle to match it so that, a nicer car and a nicer this and that. Every time he's ever gotten a raise, he's always lifted his standard of living and consumed it effectively and become dependent on that lifestyle. And he's a slave now to it, because is he going to find another job that pays $300,000? I doubt it. I feel sorry for the guy. I got this other friend, and he told me 7 years ago, similar kind of situation in a sales business, his own, working independently. Didn't like it. I mean, there were aspects of it that he liked, but there were aspects, certain of his customers and certain of the factories he represents and stuff that in this business, and again, same kind of a thing. Almost every time I spend any significant time with him, he's always complaining about his job. And he says to me, Norm, if I can just gut it out for 7 more years, I won't have to work again. Like that was a goal worth trying to achieve. Never having to work again. I said, I got a better idea. Why don't you find a job you really like and do it the rest of your life? And love it. Instead of sacrificing the best years of your life, waiting to get to some place that ain't worth getting there in the first place. Then here's the sad story of it all. 7 years have passed. And you know what? He's got another 7 years. Why? Oh, because he's moved into a bigger house and he's bought more of this and that, and all of a sudden he's consumed more, such that really he's got to keep pounding away in a job he hates. And he's enslaved to it. Here's the beauty of a graduating BYU student. You guys have, most of you have learned to live like bums, like paupers. And you're living in some kind of a basement apartment that no human being should be allowed to live in. I know, I was there. Here's the amazing thing. Your very first job, you graduate, you go out, you get a job. It's not a great job. By the way, there is no great first job. Every first job's a grunt job. I mean, you learn how to do it when you get out there. So anyways, you go out your first job, and heck, I got a master's degree in accounting, go down, work for a public accounting firm, and, the first day they say, add up this column of numbers. I went to school to learn how to do this, adding these numbers up. Here, check these documents and make sure this number agrees with that number on these 500 documents. This is a great job. Been well trained. Anyways, my first job, very first job, grunt job, not being paid that well. But it was like I had been released from prison financially, making more money than I'd ever made before. My lifestyle going through the single most significant upgrade that I've ever had in my life, from the dungeons of a basement apartment to, a little condo in Mission Viejo. My first job. And, what's amazing is I could have taken any job. I could have gone into elementary education. I could have gone into a management training program at McDonald's. I could have done almost anything and had a huge increase in my standard of living. I had complete career flexibility and didn't have to compromise my lifestyle. In fact, you never have this situation again. Not only no compromise of lifestyle, serious upgrade. Making any choice, could do anything I wanted to do. That's financial freedom. What happens, though, is that we're foolish afterwards and begin acquiring things. The key to financial independence is not making more money. It's living modestly, well within your means. It's a sure thing. And let me tell you, it is a wonderful thing to be able to say, I'm not sure I'm really satisfied in this. I think I'm going to try this. I'm going to change, from this company to another company. I'm going to retrench a little bit. I'm going to become a high school teacher, and I can afford to do it because, hey, we live modestly, and I can, I can still make it happen financially. It is powerful. It gives you so much freedom. I'm going to tell you something else about living modestly. My own personal opinion and my testimony is that we benefit spiritually if we live modestly too. All kinds of benefits, spiritual benefits. It's kind of interesting that as LDS people, I don't know why it is, and this is just my observation. Maybe it's not accurate, but my own observation is that we as a people, Mormons, tend to be more economically driven. I mean, you look in Utah County and you see it is a fact that Utah and Utah County are some of the primest areas for white-collar crime. People getting taken, scammed, get-rich-quick kinds of schemes. This is absolutely, it seems to me, like the place of, I don't think there's any location that's generated more multi-level marketing companies than Utah County. You know what I mean by multi-level marketing? The name keeps changing every few years. It used to be called multi-level marketing, then it was called network marketing. Then it was called direct marketing. The name always kind of changes. I'm guessing most of you have been exposed to it. If you haven't, I'm going to take a few moments and tell you and talk to you about it so that you have a little direction. Because if you haven't had it introduced to you, you will. It's part of life. If somebody calls you and says, hey, I'm buddy, friends, I've got something I want you to look at. They don't want to be too specific. Got something I want you to look at. We're going to have a meeting at my house tomorrow night. What are you going to, preach the gospel? No. Well, yeah, kind of, maybe. Got a business opportunity for you and stuff. And so anyways, they won't quite tell you exactly what it is, but they want you to come by and they're going to introduce you to a business opportunity. And it's a company that sells some product or service. And you're thinking, gee, I'm not sure I really want to, be in sales or something like that. Oh, hey, listen, let me explain to you how this works. See, you really almost don't have to sell anything. It's kind of, let me explain it to you. What you do, maybe it's soap products or something like this, Amway. And what you do is you're going to become a distributor. You're not just going to buy the product. You're going to become a distributor, and then you're going to distribute and sell the product. But what you really want to do And you don't go door to door or anything like this. You're not going to be a retail distributor selling it to the end user, because that's not a whole lot of fun, going door to door selling soap products. But what we want you to do or the way you do this, is what you do is you find 4 distributors, people like you, and then they find 4 distributors themselves. And you buy products for yourself, they buy products for themselves, and all of a sudden you've got, heck, you only have to go down about 4 or 5 lines, and you've got hundreds, thousands of people buying these soap products, and you get commissions on these sales. Usually you have to go like 2 levels down before you start making commissions in these structures. But you know what? Look at it. You can make a ton of money. And it ain't a whole lot of work, because all you got to do is find 4 people. And then they find 4 people. And then they find 4 people. You can make a ton of money. It is so seductive to make the millions of dollars that are available to me in this deal. Okay? By the way, that presentation right there was illegal. Violates the law. Now, you will not see that presentation in any of Amway's materials, or any of New Skin's materials, or any of these other multi-level companies, because they know it's illegal, and so you won't read it in any of their corporate brochures, because they're abiding by the law. This distributor that you're meeting with, who's enticing you to do this, is a rogue distributor. It's a rogue distributor. They're violating the law. Here's the deal. If, in fact, the promise of this company is that you can make millions of dollars by simply building downlines, it is ultimately a fraud. Mathematically, it's a fraud. All you have to do is go like 13 levels, and every human being on the face of this planet is a distributor. And almost all of them are 85% of them are on the bottom 2 levels of the distribution chain and cannot make any commissions at those levels. So to say to somebody that you can make millions of dollars is ultimately becomes a fraudulent statement. And that's why Amway, in order to comply with the law through various cases, they will not say that. They will say that the primary motivation in this business should be to make retail sales. And that, in fact, that's, in order for you to be legitimate in these businesses, your primary motivation must be to make retail sales, which are defined in the law as sales of these products, soap products, to somebody who's not a distributor and not part of your family. So it means selling to people who don't become distributors, whether you're doing it door to door or however you're doing it. That must be the primary motivation, because that's legitimate. The rest of it is really a pyramid scheme that ultimately can't produce the results that it promises to. But I'm going to tell you, these companies, they'll disavow a rogue distributor. They'll disavow him. Hey, we didn't teach him to do that. You know, him making these promises that you can get rich and these kinds of things by building downlines, we did not train him to do them. He's a rogue distributor. He is not ours. He's an independent distributor. But they love rogue distributors. They love them because that's where they make their money. It's through their operation. Most people don't really want to be retailers. So I remember my brother, Norm, come, I got a business opportunity for you. Come on over. I think it was Amway. So he shows me this thing, and I said, listen, Nathan, my brother, I love you and everything, but just so that you're aware, I got a lot of opportunities. I can do a lot of things with my time. I can, I'm involved in some real estate business here, or, I'm teaching. There's a lot of things that I can do with my time and resources, etc. And I'll just be really frank. I'm just personally not interested in becoming a retail distributor of soap products. Just doesn't turn me on. It's not something I'm really interested in doing. Gets upset. You don't get it. That's not what you're doing. You're building a business through these downlines. And at that moment, he crossed over the line, whether he knew it or not, and was doing something that was illegal. And for most people that engage in this, that's what's happening. I simply make you aware of it, because in my own mind, it's immoral and inappropriate. And it plays on, on this idea of getting rich quick. And like that's everything that there is to life. I wonder why it is that we as LDS people are so, get drawn into that kind of thing. Maybe part of it is we're just kind of an achievement-oriented people. We're people that want to be successful in whatever we do. And since I'm engaging the activities of the world, I want to be successful. And, that's how you measure it, by how much money you make. Sometimes I suppose there are people who are saying to themselves, and I think a lot of us kind of speak this, if I could get rich, then it would give me a lot more freedom to do, my time. And I could serve more missions. I could pay for more missionaries. I could do all of these wonderful things. I could be the one that funds the rebuilding of the Nauvoo temple, whatever it is. I could just, if I was rich, I could do all of these wonderful things. But I'm going to tell you, my own personal observation is that people who generate excess in their lives, the members of the church, ultimately, they rarely do it. They rarely really consecrate that. Just my own observation. Been watching a long time. From a strictly spiritual standpoint, you wouldn't hope to be rich. Think about it. I mean, if your real motivation, more than anything else, is to return to the presence of our Heavenly Father, be worthy in His sight, enjoy that relationship, you would not hope to be rich. Because it's clear, statistically speaking, the odds are against you of doing it. I mean, it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom. Harder than what? Harder than a person who doesn't have riches. Why would you purposely take the harder route? Give me more stumbling blocks. I want more stumbling blocks. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go down and live on Hollywood Boulevard, in Los Angeles, because there I'll have plenty of stumbling blocks. That's what I want to do. I don't know about you, but I'm praying more and more that temptations be removed. I spend half my time when I'm praying for the Lord to remove the stumbling blocks. I don't need any more. I mean that with all my heart. And so, why would you ever, maybe you would if you said to yourself, if I can overcome these stumbling blocks, I get a bigger reward. If I get more trials and stuff, then ultimately I get a greater share, a greater portion of the kingdom. But you won't find that anywhere in the scriptures. I've looked, tried to get some motivation. It's not there. There isn't anything that says that a poor man that overcomes their poverty, and sometimes the covetousness that comes to it, it's a lesser reward. So I don't see any spiritual advantage in becoming rich. In fact, it sounds to me like you've just seriously decreased the chances of you making it, because it is a stumbling block that is pretty tough. Okay. I want to talk about that a little bit more, but I'm going to take a little different tact on it. I think one of our problems is that we're a people that likes to measure. ourselves. How am I doing? No other success can compensate for failure in the home. Am I being successful? I mean, we're always kind of, I don't know about you, maybe it's just me, but I'm always kind of trying to figure out, how am I doing? Am I measuring up? We have a tendency to want to measure. And let me tell you, in terms of being successful, just being excellent in my work, the one way you can measure that is by, how much money you make and what you've got and where you live and what you drive. And let me tell you, it is for me, has been extremely tempting to kind of get caught up in that. I up until about a year ago, I drove a Toyota Camry, a 1987 Toyota Camry. It was like 12 years old. It was basically a piece of junk. I did buy a new car last year. I actually went down with my son Steven's sweet shop. He was looking for a car. And they had one of these deals down here at the Chevrolet dealership. It was a special used car sale. And so Steven's going to go down and buy his first car. And, he doesn't have much money, can't afford much, but I'm going to go down with him and help him look. They got some cars down there for sale for $50. So we're down there checking out these cars. Well, the $50 cars, there's no car. I mean, this is not a car. So we're looking around for cars, and there's no car within his price range, which is probably up to $700 is what he can afford. And so Steven's a little discouraged, but I kind of spot this car myself, going down to help him, and I'm spotting a car, and I'm thinking, well, that's a pretty nice used car. It's about 3 years old, 30,000 miles, Toyota Camry, same car I've got now. It's a good car. And wow, it's cheap. It's about 50% off of what it would sell for today. And the next thing I know, I'm buying this car. I figured, hey, I've been driving it, and I'm going to use it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and buy this new used car. And Stephen, what I'm going to do is you probably don't have enough money to afford to buy the car, but I'm going to go ahead and lease you this my Toyota Camry. Cut you a deal. What a guy, huh? Hey, man, I'm not going to spoil my kids. Have them work for what they get. So anyways, that's what I did. But I was driving down in Southern California a couple of years ago in my older Toyota Camry. I'm looking better nowadays, but in the old one, I'm driving down there in Southern California visiting some friends and family in the summer and driving along, and I'm discovering that I've got the worst car on the highway. I mean, I'm looking around, and there's some punk driving next to me, driving this, car that's, give me a break. I mean, and he looks over at me, and and he kind of gives me this look like I'm, some trash or something. I'm thinking to myself, this guy does not know who I am. He doesn't really have a proper perspective. Hey, Cindy, my wife, roll down the window. Roll down the window. Hey, you, over there, roll that window down. Hey, roll the window down. Just so that you're aware. You think you're really cool driving that car. Just so that you're aware, I could buy 30 of those, all cash, right now. Boom. But I don't need that kind of thing. You see, I feel good about myself. I don't need those kinds of material possessions to, I've got a good self-image. Didn't actually happen, but that's how I felt. It's what I wanted to do. Holy cow, sometimes this happens to me also in the parking lot of the Tanner building, because students will, I have a lot of students in my introductory accounting class, and so I'll sometimes be leaving the building, and I'll feel about 10 sets of eyes. Hey, I wonder what kind of car Norm drives. That'd be interesting. Let's see. He's driving. Wow, what's that? What's going on? It's like this guy must be some kind of a con artist or something. I don't get it. I feel that. That's the thought that's going through my mind. I think to myself, I probably ought to get a nicer car. to make a better impression or something. I don't know. And then as soon as that thought enters my mind, then the spiritual side says, you piece of junk. What are you concerned about how people view you relative to your possessions? I mean, that is so silly. And so I say to myself in response, I am never going to sell this car. I'm going to drive this car until it can't be driven again. And then go home to have my wife say to me, Norm, I think you've become a little prideful in your modesty. And she's probably right. I think I'm better than all these other people because I live like a dog. I don't need those things. It is so easy to do, isn't it? When I go down to Southern California, it's almost like it's like going into the world of materialism. As soon as I go down there, I start thinking I need a bigger and better this or that. See, I really ought to have a nicer house. I really ought to have, some of these other things. I just kind of, it just takes over. And then I start to think this way. You've earned some of this. I mean, really, think about it. I mean, when I was going to high school and everybody was goofing around, I was studying so that I could get into a good university. And when I got into a good university, while everybody else was goofing around, I was working my guts out. I was getting, as good a grades as I possibly can and giving up, making a lot of sacrifices socially, etc. Because I'm gonna do well. I'm gonna be excellent, get a good job. And then I get a good job, and I'm in that job, and I'm working harder than more overtime, and I'm gonna be a superstar, and I'm gonna have all the opportunities and stuff. And so finally, when you make a little bit more than you really have ever had before, you start to feel to yourself, hey, I'm a little justified in this. I mean, I worked harder than everybody else. Maybe I deserve to have a little nicer, a little better. Don't I? I feel justified in it. And at that moment is where you are in spiritual peril. Because listen to the language. I earned it. I made it happen. I'm telling you that we don't accomplish anything in this life except by the grace of God. It's by the grace of God that I'm not one chromosome short and sitting in some institution right now sucking my meals out of a straw. I mean, it's by the grace of God that I've got a body that functions, a brain that, that works halfway decently. Yet I'm going to start taking credit for all of my accomplishments. Even a little bit of credit. Probably. Isn't it interesting that after King Benjamin's discourse, the people had no desire for evil. And at the core of it was that they saw themselves and realized who they really were. That they were really less than the dust of the earth. They were totally dependent on God and fell short. Even the dust of the earth obeys His commandments. I mean, when we see ourselves in that humble way, where we're willing, we recognize His hand in all things, every accomplishment, not taking any credit ourselves. And as a result, I don't need to indulge myself. I'll do what you want me to do. I don't need a bigger this or more of that. That's why living modestly has empowered me spiritually. It has. I feel more of the blessings of the Spirit in my life when I choose to live modestly. And try to use my excess in a way that's not self-indulgent, that serves the purposes of building the kingdom. It's just been my own personal experience. Now, it is true. I mean, you've got to make a living for your family. And in fact, President Hinckley tells you that, you should do your best to provide a good living for your family. So you got to get a job, and money should be a consideration, seems to me. Something that certainly a breadwinner needs to be concerned about. But let me read to you a couple of quotes from President Hinckley. This is from the February 1999 Ensign. A talk there, Life's Obligations. Choose a vocation where you will be happy. You will spend 8 or more hours at it through all the foreseeable future. Choose something that you enjoy doing. Income is important, but you do not need to be a millionaire to be happy. In fact, you are more likely to be unhappy if wealth becomes your only objective. You will become a slave to it. It will color all your decisions. Then he says what I think is the most important thing. You need enough to get along. You need enough to get along. Then he says, choose a field in which you can grow. You need the stimulation of new effort and new ambitions, of new discoveries and new challenges. Choose something that will be stimulating and thought-provoking and that will carry with it the day-to-day opportunity to improve the society of which you are a part. Okay. Here's my advice. In terms of a major, in terms of a career, I think you ought to major in something that you're passionate about, that you love. It's just interesting, stimulating. I think you ought to have a career that when you get up in the morning, you're thinking about it in the shower. I get my best teaching ideas in the shower. True. And I can hardly wait to get here on campus. And I tell you, when it's time to go home, you know what? It's kind of hard to leave because I'm interested or engaged in what I'm doing. And the only reason why I leave is because I got a family at home and a wife that are more important to me. And gosh, I can't wait to get home. But boy, I tell you, it's kind of hard to put this down. Hopefully I don't get my priorities mixed up. But you ought to be passionate about what you do. It makes that part of life so much more fun, worthwhile. And I'm going to tell you something. If you are passionate about something, I'm not talking about some little flirtation. I'm not talking about, oh yeah, I kind of like that. I'm talking about the real deal, passion. If you are, then you will naturally become excellent in that area. You can't help it because you're thinking about it all the time. You got any extra spare time? You're getting out more books on it, studying, reading about, thinking about how to do it better, improving this, that, and the other. I mean, it is almost impossible not to become excellent in an area that you really have great passion for. Now, there are some cases where it takes some natural ability, God-given ability, but even then, I think you can find, if you become excellent in an area, you will discover that there are opportunities you can't even imagine. Now, they may not be opportunities that make me millions of dollars, but there will be opportunities for you to provide adequately for the modest and appropriate needs of a family. I believe that. If you follow something you're passionate, you'll become excellent. And excellence will breed opportunities you can't imagine, sufficient to provide for the reasonable needs of a family. Some of us are born with a passion and some talent that goes with it. I mean, if I had a child, a son or a daughter, who's now attending BYU and said, Dad, I'm planning to major in music performance, My heart would go into my throat. You got to be kidding me. What are you going to do with that? Give me a break. Music performance. You're going to make a living doing that? You're going to end up in Hollywood, even if you happen to have a career? Well, I mean, you know, I mean, really, think about it. Fine arts. You got a kid majoring in fine arts. You got a problem. You got a future problem. English. Give me a break. What can you do with that? Maybe go into business. If you're lucky. Law school, okay, yeah. Then you end up like my guy, $300,000 a year. I'm miserable. No, just kidding. I'm sure that's a viable option. Yeah, law school. Anyways, a buddy of mine in the mission field. This guy was passionate about music and clearly talented. But I mean, he just, you know, he loved music. In fact, the mission president was able to find some things for him to really amplify his talents. Came back to BYU after his mission, majoring in fine arts, music performance. Wow, that's terrific. Loved it, passionate, loves arranging music. I mean, not a flirtation. I mean, and decides that he's going to get advanced degrees and gets his PhD and ultimately comes back and teaches here at BYU. And then does something absolutely amazing with the men's chorus. This is Mac Wilberg. And you know, men's chorus just is unbelievable under his direction. And the First Presidency notices that, I think, and they call him to be associate director of the Tabernacle Choir where he is today. You know, he's a church employee. He can't be making a lot of money. He ain't living in some big house on the hill. But I doubt very much there's somebody, I mean, my impression is that he loves his work. I mean, he loves it. It's a gas. And he's making enough to provide for his family. Is there anything better than that? I don't think so. You know, the amazing thing about it is the other night I was at home and one of my kids is practicing piano. I looked at the piano book, and it's arranged and written by Mac Wilberg. I mean, what else is this guy doing? All of a sudden, he's doing so much more than just teaching because his excellence has created opportunities. He probably never thought he would, you know, be writing children's piano lesson kind of, Yet his excellence has just created opportunities that he never would have dreamed of in the first place. You know, it's great if you have a passion, and you know about it from the day you're born. Most of us, well, I've seen some other people. They seem to be passionate about everything. Like a student in my office the other day. And within about a 5-minute period, he told me about 15 different career things he's thinking about. And for every one, he was like unbelievably excited. It was like, you know, how am I going to do this? I got this business idea, this company I want to start. But yeah, look at this over here. And I mean, it was just, you know, he wanted my advice. And I mean, this guy did not have a problem with passion. His problem was focusing to one area. Because you can't become excellent in everything. And so the problem that he's got to deal with is controlling himself and becoming kind of patient and focusing in an area that he thinks maybe he's most passionate about or maybe the best opportunity, and make that happen. Become excellent in that area. Now, if it doesn't happen, then maybe you'll have to change or something. But until you've really committed yourself and not gotten so spread out, you're not going to develop excellence. You're going to become mediocre in a lot of things and probably not have a whole lot of opportunities as a result. Most of us are kind of in the middle area where I am, have been. You know, you're not sure what you're passionate about. I'm taking classes here. I mean, I'm not sure what I should be majoring in. I like this class, but hey, I take that class the next semester, and you know, it kind of depends. I don't really know what I want to do. For you lies the greatest future adventure. It's the best. It's the absolute best. Because you've got the opportunity of experimentation, discovery, figuring out what you're going to do. Sometimes we get in such a big doggone hurry. I got to graduate, you know, within 3.5 years or 4 years, and I've got to have a house by the time I'm 27. It's got to be so many square feet, and if I don't have that, then life as I know it, is not worth living, and I've just got to have this and that. And I know this. That's the way I was, and I felt like I had to get there quickly. Couldn't wait to see BYU in the rearview mirror of my car. I'm out of here. I'm finally getting on with my life. And now I look back and I say, why was I in such a doggone rush? There's a lot of life to be living. I don't have to be so doggone efficient. So I make a mistake and I take a few classes and I discover that that's not where it's at. And so it takes me an extra semester or two. I know President Bateman probably wouldn't like me to say that. He'd like you to be out of here as quickly as possible. But doggone it, hey, part of the college experience is kind of figuring out yourself, learning about yourself. And it isn't efficient. Okay. Take a little extra time. Make a few, you can afford to make some mistakes in terms of your decision on what you want to do if you live modestly. If you live modestly, you can go and try something and become a school teacher and say, this really isn't what I thought it was going to be, and I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go back and get a degree, a master's of business administration or something like that. You can afford to do it because you haven't built these expectations and you're being patient. You don't need all of these things so quickly. And let me tell you, when you get right down to it, isn't the whole purpose of life, again with a spiritual perspective, to just kind of experience as much as you possibly can? So you have a variety of experiences. I majored in accounting, going to business, real estate. The day I made enough money that I, felt like I was financially independent, I had not an ounce of desire. Not a pinprick of desire to start another business, to create another real estate investment company, to do anything else associated with business. Not an ounce. What does that tell you? What does it tell you? I've been motivated by money. That was it. I wasn't following my passions at all because there was no motivation at all once I had a little money. That was the whole purpose behind it. It was a real revelation to me. And in fact, it kind of bugged me that I had sold out effectively. If I had been wiser, had really understood myself better, I would have got a PhD and just done the traditional, become a professor thing. I kind of knew I loved teaching. When I taught this introductory class as a graduate student, it was like, man, it was intoxicating. The power. Not so much the power. It was just the, although there is maybe something to that, I don't know. Your lives are in my hands as I fill out those grade sheets. But for me, it was just so, I just enjoyed the process of teaching. And it didn't make any difference what it was about. If it was something that I understood in a way that I could explain it to somebody else and try and figure out a different way to explain it so it was clear, easier to be understood, whether it be the gospel or accounting or whatever. I should have gone into teaching from day one. Oh, Norm, you did it right. You went out and made some money so that you could then come back and do it the way you want to. Hey, I wouldn't be any, how do I say this? Less happy if I had done it the traditional way. I had one of the faculty members come up to me the other day and said, "Man, Norm, what a great life you've got. You're here teaching at BYU, and you don't have to financially." And I looked at the guy and I said, "I just want to make sure I understand this. Are you telling me that you don't love being here teaching?" you are providing enough to meet the needs of your family. I mean, you're not really living in poverty. I mean, it's close to it, but I mean, he's doing what I want to do. He's doing exactly what I'm doing. We're both teaching, hopefully doing something we love, and we both have sufficient for our needs. I mean, I just don't see the difference. If he doesn't love what he's doing, he ought to find something else to do. And he can probably find it make a lot more money doing it. Anyways, I hope I've made a few points for you. I wish I had heard this talk and been wiser as a young person. Don't get me wrong. Hey, life is pretty great. But it's pretty great because I'm doing something that I love. And I have enough to meet the needs of my family. And I think everybody can get that, as long as you make sure that your needs are modest and you discover yourself and figure things out, even if it takes a little bit of time. You don't have to be right. You might not be. Be flexible so that you can improve your decisions. And frankly, I think I'll close today by bearing my testimony. I love the gospel. I mean, I think I had a pretty good life before I joined the church. I mean, I was born and raised in a decent family, and I was pretty much living the principles of the gospel before I met the missionaries. So it wasn't a big life change. I was going to get a good education, maybe at SC, UCLA, or something like that. I would have married a decent woman and had pretty good kids. I mean, I got friends who are not members of the church who've got great lives. I think I would have had a good life if I hadn't had the influence of the gospel and the opportunities that come to me through the church. But it wouldn't have compared to the life I have. I mean, to be sealed for eternity and understand the real meaning of life and to allow that to guide and direct you and to help you make decisions and to have the whisperings of the Spirit and the blessings of the church in the lives of my family. I just so deeply indebted. We should feel that way, you and me here at BYU. This is an unbelievably unique institution. We ought to take advantage of it, squeeze everything we can out of it, and then go forth and serve. It's my prayer that we'll do that, and I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.